Computer. Okay, hello, this is Joe Kelty, and I'm here with my colleagues, Abby Robertson and Sonia Robertson. And today we're going to be teaching on the topic of educational assessments. And the source for our content is a book written by Dr. Holly Thornton. And specifically, we're going to address chapter 6, which was written by Lois Boone. And so thank you, Abby. There's a cover of the document of the book. Okay, so one of the key points in chapter 6 has to do with standardized testing and how to best assess student learning and comprehension through assessments and through standardized testing. So school systems, they use standardized tests in the hope that they will be accurate and objective. And if they are, then the results can be used to compare or assess students. And they compare the students to each other. Ironically, standardized testing does not really seem to provide the objective results that school systems want. And this is because standardized tests mainly use a limited response format. What do I mean by that? Limited response means multiple choice questions or true and false questions. So we've all taken tests like that, and that's what limited response is. And most standardized testing uses limited response. So the problem is that student understanding and comprehension can't really be assessed well with limited response. For example, let's say that there's a test question that reads, can you explain how the 3 branches of the United States government work together? Yes or no? And so I'm on my test and I write yes. I get credit for getting the test question right. But do I really have the ability to explain the 3 branches of government to someone? Well, the test doesn't really show that because it's limited response. The point is, it's not really an accurate or a good, dependable assessment of student learning. Here's another reason why standardized tests don't always provide the objective results that we want, and it is stress, the stress of the test taker. Since the test results are used to compare students to other students, then the students are going to become anxious. They know that the school system needs to use these standardized tests to compare how well are the students learning, and they're probably worried, who's going to be rated worst? Who's going to be rated best? Where am I going to fall? And that creates anxiety and stress for the students. But think about this, the standardized test is also used to rate teachers and how well they teach versus other teachers. So the teachers are going to be a little stressed and the students are going to pick up on that. And for that matter, the same standardized tests are used to rate schools against other schools. Which schools are doing the best? Which schools aren't? And other states are compared to our state. Which states are doing best? So the school administrators are probably a little anxious and the teachers are anxious. You can bet the kids and the students are anxious when they take the tests. So how well do people normally perform when they're under pressure? Or if you're really nervous, like I am right now, if you're really nervous, do you think clearly? Well, probably not as much. And so then you can see that stressful students taking tests don't always provide accurate, objective results. And so then the assessment of their learning may be skewed. Okay, that's the main point. Now in chapter 6, the teacher provides an example of a student named Micah who experiences this. Micah was always really great in class. He had a good attitude. He expressed creativity. He seemed to understand all the lessons and the various subject matter. But at the end of class, the final exam comes up and it's a standardized test with limited response. And Micah gets very anxious about how's he going to do on the final exam. And he kind of shuts down intellectually and he becomes emotional. He ends up being the last person to turn in the test and he gets a very low score. And the teacher thinks, you know, this did not match Micah's abilities. It didn't match his behavior in class. He's such a smart student. He's got a real passion for learning. This is really not characteristic of this student. Now, she had a really good relationship with Micah, and she had other examples from class that demonstrated his learning comprehension. She had written assignments, oral presentations, various classroom projects that he had done. And so she went to the school administrators and said, you know, Micah is in the honor student honor track class system. And I don't think this test should count against him. He should be able to stay in the honors track classes at this school. This one standardized test shouldn't negatively affect his education. And the administration agreed. And thank goodness that she had a good relationship and she had multiple assessment types to draw from for a good, accurate assessment of this young man. So to summarize the key points for my section, it would be better for educators to implement multiple types of assessment in addition to standardized tests that may feature limited response. And any additional assessments should ideally relate to Bloom's taxonomy, something that really allows the student to demonstrate their creativity, how they can generate and apply knowledge to skills that they've learned. And so for example, have the students do critical thinking skills through oral presentations or written responses, that sort of thing, because all that will provide a much more accurate and objective assessment of how that student's knowledge and learning is progressing. Okay, so now Abby is going to teach on the next key point about assessments.
All right, so continuing to build upon what Joe just shared with us, in chapter 6, we're going to have a second takeaway, and this takeaway is twofold. So the first half is we need to be sure that we are keeping authenticity in our assessments. So what does authenticity in assessments mean? What does that look like? The author defines the best assessments as allowing our students to create, generate, and apply these acquired skills from our instructions. So you think about maybe doing a video or some kind of oral presentation or some of the other examples that Joe used about to really show the authenticness of their knowledge. The second half of this takeaway is to make sure that we are providing differentiated approaches. So for an effort for instructors or us as teachers to collect evidence of each student's learning, the author emphasizes that we really need to make sure that we have this differentiation in our assessments. So assessments need to make sure we're challenging all levels, as it talks about on page 81. And the example she gave was she assigned her students to read Edgar Allan Poe's Telltale Heart. And in this example, she assigned basically a courtroom simulation from the reading. And the assessment was differentiated for inclusion, regular, and her AIG classes with a rubric that was assessed for each class. So, and I've used something similar in my class. We had, I teach sports and entertainment marketing. And so we had to research a famous entertainment or sports arena. They had 3 options of how they could complete the assignment. They could kind of choose it based on their own dispositions and their own strategies. And sorry, my printer decided to do something. And so what we did is we made sure that we had 3 different rubrics for each assignment. And one could choose to draw an artistic view of the arena and try to incorporate some of the physical characteristics, but also just the overall atmosphere and feel that they had when they went into this arena. Others wrote a review, like they were a sports reviewer or maybe just a community reviewer of the new space. And then the third option was they could create an advertisement that promoted this arena, and they were to make sure that they showed all the features and the benefits. This was really well received. My students really enjoyed it, and it allowed them to use their own strengths, and it allowed me to easily assess 3 different assignments because I had a rubric for each, but also it just let me know that they were really receiving the information, even though they were doing it very differently. And so as we think about everything that Joe and I have covered, we can only make sure that these kind of different approaches work if we incorporate our third point, which Sonia will present now.
Thank you, Abby. So in my section, we will discuss the difference between a responsive disposition and technical disposition. So a responsive disposition approach to teaching is better than a purely technical approach and will also help challenge our more gifted students. For example, when a bright student is presented with a limited response test, as Joe previously gave an example of a technical disposition approach in teaching, given his example was the student was given an assessment and required to respond with a yes or no answer. So that's a perfect example of a technical disposition. Now, a more responsive disposition in teaching is giving an assessment and asking students to respond with an essay question, or give them more of an more examples in answers in an essay format. That would let the teacher know if the student, two things. One, if they understood the question, because they had to think about what is being asked. And two, do they have knowledge of the information that was asked? So the next, okay. The students who are not challenged in the classroom tends to get bored and unmotivated and even they don't grow academically because they're bored. They're not being challenged enough. Now, a responsive disposition approach to teaching will help to build students, build a positive relationship with students. It will also challenge gifted students to apply their creative and critical thinking skills in ways that will cultivate both their personal and academic growth. In closing, the educator that authored Chapter 6 collected data from her students about the qualities that they thought made a good teacher. Most responses were having a good relationship with the teacher was most important to them. Now, successful teachers need to listen to their students, have an engaging personality, and they need to design collaborative and creative learning activities that are purposeful, inspiring, and engaging for the students and for students with all abilities. Now, I pose this question to you. But first, before I leave you with this question to think about, I'll leave you with a nugget. Remember, responsive disposition and varied assessment approach enable educators to effectively help students to grow in a developmentally responsible way. Now, question to you. Think of a student that tests very well, complies with the rubrics, and completes work on time. However, their submissions are minimal at best and do not reflect their higher level thinking that they are capable of. What strategies or challenges can we establish to increase their excitement and improve the quality of their work? Now I turn it back over to Joe.
Okay, thank you. And that's the end of our presentation. Dr. Thornton, we appreciate the challenge that came from this. Hello to Abby's husband.
Sorry.
Okay,
Office space.
thanks for your attention, everybody.